Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, April the 10th. Welcome to the 4th edition of Book Fun Friday. So, this was supposed to be spring break for me. And my original plan, pre-COVID, was that I would be spending this week down at the Outer Banks with several books to read. Obviously, that didn't happen. Now, my normal procedure when traveling with books on vacation is not necessarily to read YA books. And I mentioned last Friday that my book talk this week would be different than the prior three, and that's because of that. My book talk this week will not center on a young adult novel, but on a more adult novel. And the name of that novel is American Dirt, and this is a book written by Jeanine Cummins. I'm going to read the description of the novel so you get a sense of what the book is about. It's a migrant story. And then I've selected some passages for you to get an idea of what exactly that migrant journey was that our protagonist had to take. So let me just share a little summary here of what this particular book is about. Lydia Perez, and Lydia is the protagonist, Lydia Perez lives in the Mexican city of Acapulco. She runs a bookstore. She has a son, Luca, the love of her life, and a wonderful husband who is a journalist. And while there are cracks beginning to show in Acapulco because of the drug cartels, her life is, by and large, fairly comfortable. Even though she knows they'll never sell, Lydia stocks some of her all-time favorite books in her store. And then, one day, a man enters the shop to browse and comes up to the register with a few books he would like to buy. Two of them are her favorites. The man's name is Javier. Javier is erudite, he is charming, and unbeknownst to Lydia, he is the jefe of the newest drug cartel that has gruesomely taken over the city. When Lydia's husband's tell-all profile of Javier is published, none of their lives will ever be the same again. Forced to flee, Lydia and 8-year-old Luca soon find themselves miles and worlds away from their comfortable middle-class existence. Instantly transformed into migrants, Lydia and Luca ride La Bestia, trains that make their way north toward the United States, which is the only place Javier's reach doesn't extend. So I've picked some passages that give you a sense of what life is like for Lydia and her son, who are having to flee their home and do everything that they can to get away from this man Javier, who is a murderer, multiple murderer. He's a horrible person, and she's terrified down to her bones of him and what he is capable of doing. She's seen that up close and personal with her own family, and so she's running, doing everything she can to protect herself, and more importantly, to protect her son. So let's listen to 4 passages of Lydia's journey in American Dirt. When the idea first occurred to her as she squatted in the shade, it occurred as camouflage. They could disguise themselves as migrants. But now that she's sitting here in a quiet library with her son and their stuffed backpacks, like a thunderclap, Lydia understands that it's not a disguise at all. She and Luca are actual migrants. That is what they are. And that simple fact, among all the other severe new realities of her life, knocks the breath clean out of her lungs. All her life, she's pitied those poor people. She's donated money. She's wondered, with a sort of detached fascination of the comfortable elite, how dire the conditions of their lives must be, wherever they come from, that this is the better option. That these people would leave their homes, their cultures, their families, even their languages, and venture into tremendous peril, risking their very lives, all for the chance to get to the dream of some faraway country that doesn't even want them. So that's passage 1. Get a little sense there that Lydia's perspective, what it was before and what it is now. And this second passage touches on one of the migrants that they're traveling with. Lydia realizes as she and Luca are making their journey to the U.S. that it's not just the two of them, that their migrants are everywhere, and they all come together in different places and board trains in different places. And so little by little, they get to know each other. And one of the women they get to know is a young girl named Soledad. And this paragraph mentions Soledad. She's a migrant traveling with them. The wait there with the other migrants feels like the longest stretch of hours in Soledad's life. Ever since Luca told her how close they are to the north, she fancies she can smell it there on the horizon, all McNuggets and fresh Nikes. She can almost see it shimmering in the distance, and her whole body twitches with the yearning for it. She leans north with her spine, her eyes, her lungs. While the others sleep that night on the cold, packed earth against a cinder block wall of a bordering garden, she paces the tracks in the moonlight, tense with fear that something more will happen now that they're this close. Some fresh horror will swoop down on them and steal the dream they've almost accomplished. She tries to doze, and when her head begins to pound, she realizes she's been holding her breath. In the morning, a local resident drapes a hose over the garden wall so the migrants can brush their teeth, wet their faces, and fill their canteens. Now, there's a mention there, too, of somebody putting a hose over the wall. And what they've discovered throughout this book is that along the way there's a network of help getting them from where they're running to a place where they can pass into the United States. It's almost like an underground railroad, if you will, helping the migrants along the way. There are churches that help and people who offer them food, who offer them drink, who offer them shelter as they're making their journey. That was a reference to one of those places where they had been able to get a small refuge. It was outside, sleeping outside in a garden, nothing fancy, obviously, and then they'd wash from a garden hose the next morning. But that was one of those stops along the way. In this next passage, you get a sense of Lydia. This is getting toward the end of their journey, the way Lydia feels about her son. And Luca is Luca's her son. Luca is really the reason, aside from saving herself, but Luca is really the reason that she has been bold enough to undertake this journey to save his life. Lydia has always been a devoted mother, but she's never been the codependent kind who misses her child when he goes to school or goes to sleep. She has always treasured that time to herself, to inhabit her own thoughts, to have a break from the nonstop emotional clamoring of motherhood. There were even times in Acapulco when she'd experienced a sliver of resentment at the way Luca barged into her heart and mind whenever he was around, how Luca's energy usurped everything else in the room. She loved that boy with her whole heart, but my God, there were days when she couldn't fully breathe until she had left him at the schoolyard gate. That's all over now. She would staple him to her, sew him into her skin, affix her body permanently to his now, if she could. She would grow her hair into his scalp, would become his conjoined twin mother. She would forgo a private thought in her head for the rest of her life if she could keep him safe. And this last little bit that I want to share with you is the moment that Lydia experiences when she comes to that point where she's journeying from where she gets to actually make it across the border from Mexico into the U.S. She had one idea about what it would feel like to get there, and then we see in the passage how it actually was. Lydia expected the crossing would be momentous. that it would happen in an instant, that she would, in the space of one footstep, leave Mexico and enter the United States. She expected to be able to pause, so she might look back and reflect, both physically and metaphorically, at what she was leaving behind, the omnipresent fear of Javier and his henchmen. After 18 days and 1,600 miles of endurance, she wanted to feel that she was slipping his noose. But she wants to look further back than that, to her life before, to her happy childhood in Acapulco, to the orange bathing suit she wore every day during the summer of her 6th birthday, diving from the cliffs when she was a teenager, walking with her father when she was still small enough to hold his hand without embarrassment. Her mother, college, Sebastian, the bookstore, holding Luca outside her body for the first time. Lydia expected there would be a moment when these notions would flood through her all at once, like a small death, like a portal. When she crossed, she hoped it would feel like one of those desert rattlesnakes, to shed the skin of her anguish and leave it behind her in the Mexican dirt. But after all that, the moment of the crossing just passes. She didn't even realize it had happened. She never looked back, never committed any small act of ceremony to help launch her into the new life on the other side. It was just forward. And again, this is a book called American Dirt. It's by Jeanine Cummins, and it's an immigrant story. I didn't mention this earlier, but I should mention it's set in current times. This isn't many years ago. This is modern day times too, which gives you a little bit of a perspective as well. Well, today is Good Friday, which is a contemplative day. It's a serious day. It's a sacred day, which I think is appropriate to note. This is also a serious book that makes us contemplate things. I do hope you have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter to those of you who are celebrating Easter. I look forward to seeing you next Friday when I get back to young adult format. And in the meantime, take care, stay well. I hope you and yours are all healthy. Thanks for watching. Bye.